Psalm a day. Today's psalm is number two. Number two, Psalm number two. The reign of the Lord's anointed. The reign of the Lord's anointed. So, what is rain? It also sounds like rain that's falling from the sky. This reign is a royal office, king or queen. Or I like to speak on king and queen, the balance of male and female together. So when we have the definition of reign, we're going to get started with Psalm number two, the reign of the Lord's anointed. And this psalm is number two. It's 12 verses. And it starts, and I have my hot tea, my chanting bowl. And as you can see, got all this on because it's freezing. It's cold. So in this psalm is calling on the Lord's anointed, those who have been anointed by the Most High, and they're reigning as ruler, as king and queen. So I look at this psalm as evidence of the spoken word of Jesus is king, all right, as well as queen. So in that second coming, we see Jesus, speaking of when he comes again, he's going to come as a king of kings. However, that king has a queen. And in that coronation on November 2nd, 1930, Haile Selassie I was crowned king of kings alongside his queen, representing that, lineage of David and Solomon and Jesus. So we look at this Psalm number two as giving evidence to that. All right. And we start off with a question. The Psalm starts off with the question, why? Why do the nations rage and the people plot in vain? So this is a question that's going out, to all who's hearing this psalm number two. It doesn't begin with talking about the Lord's anointed. It's talking about the nations. The nations are in a rage. They're in an anger. They're in a basic rage. And the people of these nations are plotting in vain. And meaning in terms of they're making these plots that are to naught. They're just, like waiting in vain. You're just waiting. So why do the nations rage and the peoples plot in vain? So this question begs to an answer. It's it's throwing out this question of why are the nations raging. So when we look at the nations and this rage of war and rumors of war we have going on in and among these nations, this is a very appropriate psalm for this time that we're in now. So as the psalm keeps on with verse number 2, the kings of the earth set themselves and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against the Lord's anointed, speaking, let burst the bonds apart and cast away the anointed's cords from around, And when we look at this is verse 2 and 3. verse 2 and 3. Boy, my dog is, I told him I'm doing a psalm and he's just, stop, sit down, listen, sit and listen to the psalm. And so verse 2 and 3 I just read. In verse 1 there's a question, why are the nations raging? In verse 2 it's basically stating that the kings, these rulers of the earth who, are ruling over these nations are setting themselves, and these rulers they're coming together to, against the righteousness and goodness that is the Lord, and against those who are for that. And they're speaking of breaking and bursting the bonds apart, the bonds that hold people who are the anointed, breaking them apart and casting away these, their cords. So it's as if, these rulers of the earth want to take apart what is good and compassion and kindness and love and grace and mercy that is of the Most High. That's why we have the death penalty. There's no mercy for someone who does something, wrong. You want to put them to death, and the whole people are for that because it's a loved one and they want, revenge. But that is something that we have to really kind of look at in terms of, okay, the death penalty is putting ourselves and putting to death another human being, instead of giving them counseling. So in this psalm, verse 1, 2, and 3 I just read, it is looking at these nations, and it's like almost 7 in the rise. Oh, my clock, I need a new battery for it. Okay, that's why it stopped. But it's almost 7 in the rise, and it's a Sunday the 4th, 2024. Very important things happening today. So I want to get started, and I want to finish up with the psalm and the word of the day. So when we look at Psalm 2, verse 1, 2, and 3, there's a question. And verse 2, there's a statement of, what's going on in this nation and these, this world, and what they want to do. And they're speaking of, doing these things and breaking apart the goodness and the righteousness. And then in verse 4, we look at the psalm goes into, talking about the Most High. He who sits in the heavens laughs. And I don't use pronouns, so he and she. The Most High, the Almighty, sits in the Isla places in heaven. I use the word Isla place, happy place, good place, place of mercy and kindness and love. And, I've been in people's homes where I felt that heavenly, vibes. And I've been in people's homes where I didn't feel that. So when we look at the word heaven, that heaven is a state of mind, and it's a physical place for our minds to go. So when we look at that, I translate verse 4. The Most High sits in the Isla place, the happy place, and, laughing. The Most High holds these kings of the earth, the nations, in derision. And derision is, when we look at that definition of derision, and I looked it up earlier, derision. Derision is a, contemptuous ridicule. So that's what the Most High, the psalm is speaking, that the Most High is going to hold them in this contemptuous ridicule state. The nations, that is what's going to happen to those who want to break the anointed of the Most High apart, or try to attack the anointed of the Most High. So in verse 4, this is what the results are going to be. The Most High sits in the island place and laughs. The Most High sits high and looks low. The Most High gonna keep and hold these ones who are, talking about breaking the bonds of the anointed. They're gonna be held in derision. And in verse 5, then the Most High will speak to them in the Most High's wrath and terrify them in the Most High's fury, speaking, "As for I have set I king on the Isla place, Zion, my Isla hill." So verse 4, 5, and 6, is speaking of what is the result. This one that sits in the Isla place is going to hold these people accountable. And the one who sits in this happy Isla place is going to speak to them in wrath and terrify them in fury. So not only is the psalm describing the Most High as laughing, but the Most High as having a wrath and a fury. And the Most High is speaking of setting this king, this Negus, on Zion, on the Most High's holy hill. There's going to be a one that's going to be set there, right? So in verse 7 now, the psalm goes into what I'm going to do, what actions I'm going to take. Verse 7, "I will tell of the decree." And when we look at the word decree is an official order. It's issued by a legal authority. It's like an official statement. So the psalm is speaking of talking and telling of the decree. The Most High said to I, the sons and daughters, you are the eyes are I, sons and daughters. Today I have begotten the eye. Ask of I, and I will make the nations the eye's heritage, and the ends of the earth the eye's possession. The eye shall break these nations who are trying to fight against the anointed, break these nations with a rod of iron and dash them in pieces, dash these nations who are trying to fight against the anointed of the Most High to be dashed in pieces as a potter's vessel. So this is an official order in verse 7 to 9 that the Most High is explaining in this psalm. And David is speaking that the Lord said to David, you are my son, today I've begotten you. Ask of me, and I'm going to make, the nations your heritage and the ends of the earth your possession. You're going to possess, these places, and you're going to break these, these rulers who are taking teachings together, and they're trying to fight against the anointed of the Most High. This is what's going to happen. They're going to be broken up into pieces as a potter's vessel. So David is speaking as what is the result of that's going to happen. And David speaks of this as the Most High speaking to him. And now in the final three verses, 10, 11, and 12, David speaks on, now therefore, O kings, be wise, be warned, O rulers of the earth. So in verse 10, it's a warning signal. The signal has been, happened, and it's a warning. And what is the warning? In verse 11, the warning is serve the Lord with fear and rejoice with trembling. So in verse 11, and we know from previous Psalms that fearing the Most High, fearing the Lord is the beginning of the surrendering and service, right? When you fear the Most High, you're afraid to do wrong doings. You're like, oh, I'm not going to do that. I fear the Most High. So you are giving that service of, that is part of that service, doing good, rejoice with trembling. And then in verse 12, it's even an action of kiss the son and daughters, lest the sons and daughters be angry and perish in the way. For the wrath is quickly kindled of the Most High. Blessed are all that take safety in the Most High. Selah and Selah again. So that ends the psalm for today. Psalm number 2, 12 verses, wonderful adulation and adoration of the Most High in the psalm, as we looked at the question that was asked and the answer that was given, that there's a warning, you rulers of the earth. In the first verse, asking the question of why do the nations rage and the people plot in vain. And at the end of the psalm, the answer is, be warned, rulers of this place, that you need to serve with fair. So if you are a policeman or you are serving the people, a teacher or something, you need to serve the Most High with fair, that you're not going to harm or try to hurt anybody that you are serving. So that's your beginning of serving the Lord, having that fair. So when we look at, I say, I end the psalm with Selah, Selah again. Bless that my words and my meditation is acceptable to the Most High. And I look at the word of the day. Today is joy, joy, joy all around. Okay. I'm typing reports. I'm, preparing a presentation that I'm doing in a couple days. It's just a lot. However, I still try to find joy, and that's the word of the day today on February 4th, Sunday, the 4th of February. The 4th of the month, I do Dr. Sewer's story time, or story time with Dr. Sewer. And in my story time, I read a book, a story, and talk about my son. And the reason I chose the 4th of the month is because my son was birthed on the 4th of January, and my daughter was birthed on the 4th of November. So in looking at that, I use that day on the 4th, whatever day it's on, to stop and do a story time with Dr. Sewer. So joy on this day is very important, especially on this day. So I'll read the word of the day from dailyword.com, and it's about joy. Joy is mine through all the seasons of life. Throughout my life, joy is always part of me. As the sun that is always shining, even when obscured by clouds, joy is there in my happiest moments and also during my bleakest times. Joy keeps me present to life as life unfolds, responsive and adaptive, accepting what I cannot change and having the courage to change what I can. Much more than a feeling, joy is part of me, a way to feel the presence of God, the Most High, the Almighty Jah, Jehovah Jireh, Rastafari, Selassie the First, Jesus Christ, that presence of that loving, kind, merciful Most High, and live from righteousness. Joy is the anchor that keeps me rooted in love and fullness, and the wings that strengthen I soar through the open skies of imagination and choice. My righteousness identity has its foundation in the divine idea of joy, and I carry joy with me wherever I go and in everything I do. Joy is the word of the day today, and it's supported by Psalm 16, verse 11. God shows me the path of life. In God's presence, there is fullness of joy. So stay in the presence of that, and thank you for joining me on Chant A Psalm A Day. Go out there and share joy with someone. Thanks for listening. Selah and Selah again.